We've just completed our melee DPS review, and honestly, you've done a spectacular job.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Next up, we're going to be reviewing all of the ranged DPS specs. Should we go and have a quick sneak peek?
Yeah.
Ion, did you bring a boombox with you again, you party animal? I know you like to party. Hello guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another Dragonflight beta ranged review specifically for Mythic Plus. We're moving on to Arcane Mage. Arcane Mage has been in a funny spot. It's never really been as good as Frost or Fire. I mean, Fire's it's been the king, right? It just has been for all of Shadowlands. Frost has had its times as well where it's been decent. But Arcane's never really felt that good. It was meta for raiding and like single target at some points, and specifically like cleave, where you were getting cleave damage in raids, right? It's been better and it's been performing very well. But for Mythic Plus, it's never been that good, and it's for two reasons really. The first is that you're a cleave class, right? So most of your AoE damage comes through Arcane Barrage, right? And Arcane Barrage itself is only hitting up to 5 targets, so you're a bit like Warrior, right? So Fury Warrior, where you're only hitting 5 targets, although I'd even say you may be a bit worse than Fury, because Fury still has some access to uncapped AoE, right? Whereas a lot of your uncapped AoE, so like Arcane Explosion really isn't that high up in your damage. Like honestly, most of your damage comes through Arcane Barrage, so it being capped at 5 targets definitely hurts it. And when it's being weighed up against things like Fire and Frost, especially Fire, which is doing a lot of uncapped AoE, well, because of the damage profile, you're probably never really going to play Arcane if you're a mage, unless you just love it. I mean, you can play it, any spec you can really play to a decent level, right? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't play Arcane Mage, I'm just saying that purely numbers based, Fire's obviously better, right? And I honestly don't think much is changing. I really don't think much is changing in Dragonflight. I love the changes, they're thematic, but power level for Mythic Plus, most of the gains that you're really getting are in utility and tankiness. Your damage is still decent, but I think when it comes down to it, either Frost or Fire are most likely going to be better. So how do we run the episodes then? We go through the 3 big wins, 3 big losses, and any notable mentions that haven't made it into those 2 top 3s. We then give it a score. I'm going to give you a score straight away. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. The reason why it's getting an 8 out of 10 is because it's gaining in tankiness and utility, as with all of the other mage specs, right? Arcane's actually gaining slightly more utility, which we'll get onto in a second, but that's where its additional points are coming through from. So if you don't know, right, normally I start off at a 6 out of 10 if you're just baseline the same as live, but you're gaining access to most of your talents. Well, that's a 6 out of 10, right? And then I'm giving it 1 point for tankiness and 1 point for utility, so it's ended up at an 8 out of 10. It's not getting any points for its damage changes really. Like I said, they're thematic, they're cool, I like the changes, but they're not good enough really to be on that same level as Frost. I mean, Frost was very close to a 10, but this is maybe close to a 9, but it's like, it's not, and I'm not going to give 0.5s out, so I'm not giving it an 8.5, but it's still good. Like I said, I just think it's going to be overshadowed. So if you want to stick around, feel free to. The first big win, which we'll go through, right, is a single ability, and it is Arcane Surge. So Arcane Surge has been changed from Arcane Power right now. Basically, the way that this works is it just nukes a target, it does splash AoE damage, reduced damage beyond 5 targets. You then get massive amounts of mana regeneration, so you basically regenerated mana all the way up to max mana again. And then you're getting a spell damage increase over 15 seconds, I think. Yeah, it's 15 seconds, so it's a big nuke, and then it also increases damage afterwards, so it's a big cooldown as well. It's really fun. I love the way that it plays. It's way better than just a flat damage increase through Arcane Power, right? I like this much more. It's very thematic as well. Like I said, the changes, although they might not be that powerful, they feel very thematic for Arcane, and I'm more excited about this in Raid. Do you know what I mean? Like these changes that you're getting, I'd be hyped for in Raid. But yeah, it's a cool change for sure, so a big thumbs up. The second big win, right, is Bombardment. So down here, Arcane Bombardment. You don't have this on live currently, but this is some execute damage, and it's an incredible amount of execute damage in AoE. So Arcane Barrage deals an additional 100% damage against targets below 35% HP. That's insane. That is very, very strong. It's kind of crazy how much damage you're going to get on like low HP mobs in Mythic Plus. So that's where like a lot of your damage is going to come from, right? Is below 35%. A lot of your damage anyway comes from Arcane Barrage and AoE. This just is pumping it even harder. So this is a big, big win. It doesn't really change like your profile, the way that you play or anything. It's just a flat damage increase. So it's not the same as Arcane Sage, which was cool. This is just a power gain, but I have to mention it because it's a big power gain. The final win, which I'm going to mention, is Utility. Now, you can take this on live, right? You can take Supernova on live as a talent. But now, because you've got access to way more points and nodes, you're most likely going to take it for Mythic Plus, which means that you've got a 25-second AoE knock-up. You can get access to Dragon's Breath in the normal mage tree, right? Which is a 45-second AoE interrupt as well, an AoE stop. And then you can get access to Blast Wave, which is another 30-second AoE stop, a very small AoE knockback. That's incredibly good. You now, I think, off the top of my head, you just have the most AoE stops on the game on some incredibly short cooldowns. I think there's only Enhanced Shaman, which gets close with an AoE knock up with the Thunderstorm nodes taken. You then have Sundering, which is like a 45-second cooldown, right? Which is an AoE stop, and then you have Cap Totem, but Cap Totem isn't as useful, and Cap Totem's even a longer cooldown, so Supernova is the same as the Thunderstorm, right? Dragon's Breath is the same as Sundering, right? And then you've got Blast Wave, which is just better than in Cap Totem in my mind, so you're in a class of your own as an Arcane Mage with how many AoE stops you're getting, so that's really, really good. That's a lot of stops. You can literally just carry a group. This number of AoE stops, you can probably stop everything that you ever need to, so it's very, very strong. On to the losses then, right? The first loss is this node here, Orb Barrage, and the previous one, so this like capstone. The first one, Prodigious Savant. Arcane charges further increase mastery effectiveness of Arcane Blast and Arcane Barrage by 20%. So, although I don't have a huge amount of mastery currently, right? We have whatever that is there. Arcane charge increases the damage of Arcane Blast by an additional 11% and Arcane Barrage by 5.5%. An extra, that's a 2.0, so an extra 40% on that is like 2% damage. So that's 2 nodes for 2% damage on just Arcane Barrage and AoE, right? That's really not good. And then the last node isn't even that great either. Orb Barrage, consuming clear casting reduces the cooldown of Arcane Orb by 2 seconds. You get quite a few clear casting procs in AoE, but there's not that many. And then the last part of this, additionally, casting Arcane Missiles 15 times fires an Arcane Orb toward your target. Clear cast Arcane Missiles count as 2, so roughly every 8 to 10 Arcane Missiles that you're going to be pressing, something like that, you'll get a free Arcane Orb. Again, it's just not that great. And for capstones, I want to be excited about the capstones, right? We're even taking what's mostly single target here, I think. So this is the build that I've just come up with. You probably are going to change some points around, but I think Arcane Harmony is actually going to be better than these two. Like, these two just seem really, really weak, even with playing with them. The cooldown reduction's okay on Arcane Orb, but it's not that good. Do you know what I mean? It's alright, whereas Arcane Harmony is also increasing barrage damage, right? So whenever you're spending clear casting procs on Arcane Missiles, you're getting Arcane Barrage damage. Like, that just seems better than getting the free Arcane Orbs and the cooldown reduction on Arcane Orbs, so it's definitely a loss. It would have been nicer to see something a bit more impactful in the capstones here. The second loss is a fairly minor one. It's really not that big, but slipstream, so this is where a lot of your movement comes from. So clear casting allows arcane missiles to be channeled while moving. Evocation can also be channeled while moving. You don't have very many free globals in single target to move. You still have Shimmer, right? And you have Presence of Mind over here, which now means that you're next to Arcane Blast or Instant Cast, but really, this is what you want. Like, you really want to get this point. I don't know what you would drop. Like, I think you're probably going to drop Supernova and like improved Prismatic Barrier, and then you'll get Slipstream and like Arcane Familiar or something. I'm not sure, but it feels wrong that we can't get this easily. I wish this was in a bit of an easier spot to access. I really don't know, but it's a bit frustrating that it is where it is. The final loss is time manipulation over here. So clear casting arcane missiles reduces the cooldown of your loss of control abilities by 1 second. That would be awesome for Mythic Plus. So that's going to reduce the cooldown of Dragon's Breath. And Supernova, again, you would just be like pumping out AoE stops. But it's competing with the likes of Shifting Power, Temporal Warp, just getting rid of Dragon's Breath entirely, right? I really don't think you'd ever be able to take this in Mythic Plus. You may do it for PvP so that then you can get more stops out and stuff, but to me, it's a very frustrating thing to see utility in the bottom side of the tree that's competing with throughput. For PvE, it just means I don't think you'd ever take it, so it's a frustrating node to be where it is. On to notable mentions then. The first one that I want to mention is Mana Adept here. So Arcane Barrage grants you 2% of your maximum mana per arcane charge spent. So that's 8% mana per Arcane Barrage. You can essentially sustain yourself with just this. From what I've tested, you don't really need to worry about mana at all, as long as you're spending your clear casting procs with the Reverberate node here. So your Arcane Explosions are giving you more Arcane Charges. In AoE, honestly, you don't need to worry about mana with this, so that's great. It's just makes the spec, it's like a quality of life change, do you know what I mean? It's a nice quality of life to have. The next one is exactly the same. It's another nice quality of life to have. Charged Orb. Arcane Orb grants 1 additional charge. So now we have 2 charges of Arcane Orb, right? That just means when you're going into your big burst windows, or when you're just going into a new pack, right, you're moving between packs in Mythic Plus often, so you just get more recharge time. It just means that you're always going to go in with more burst, and you can play around this to try and stack up charges as you're going back into cooldowns and things, which is nice. So overall, it's a great change. Your main like generating abilities that are going to give you those big short burst windows where you're doing much more damage, it's great to see charges on those abilities specifically. So it's a great quality of life. Again, the next notable mention that I want to go through is tankiness. So I gave Frost Mage a win for this. The reason why I'm not giving Arcane Mage a win is just to, you know, mix it up a little bit, but it is a huge win again. Greater invis, like I said, we've just been through it in the Frost Mage video. I'm not going to hammer this home. It's a 60% damage reduction on big hits when you need it. It doesn't really affect throughput because you only get, you know, a global plus 3 seconds, so like 4 seconds really, something like that, of the damage reduction if you're wanting to maintain your throughput, your damage, right? So it's nothing great for dot damage or like sustained damage that you're going to be taking, but for those big hits, greater invis is amazing. You're also getting reduplication over here, so we get a 30-second cooldown reduction on mirror image, which again is awesome. Very, very good. The final notable mention is Temporal Warp here. It's a big win, but it didn't make it into the list, so it's going to the notable mentions. This just gives you even more burst, right? So you're essentially going to have 2 lust effects every single time that lust is used. In fact, you get another one after 5 minutes again, right? Because you can just use it on CD. You can use your time warp on CD. So it's a really, really strong ability. it just adds like an extra cooldown into your rotation, right? Where every 5 minutes, basically whenever you use a pot, you're going to have more damage. So it's really, really strong. Great to see that coming forwards again. I love anything which means that you get these stronger, bigger burst windows, where you can like pull around it. You know, if you're going to have huge damage every once in a while, that's it's awesome. That's it then. That's all the notable mentions, right? Like I said, it's an 8 out of 10. I would have loved to give it more, but it really needed something. It needed like the marksman and outlaw treatment, where it was going to make Arcane Barrage hit like 8 targets, right? So instead of just hitting 5, it needed unleashing in that way. Or maybe it needed, I don't know, there's a point here like Nether Tempest where you can spend your arcane charges on this dot, right? Maybe it just cranks this dot, so like you could use this dot ability and like you can spread it up to loads of targets that's then doing lots of AoE, like mass AoE. It needed some way, I think, of spending arcane charges that could do damage to more than 5 targets. That's... even if it was on a cooldown or something, I don't really know, but that's ideally what I would have liked to have seen to unleash Arcane in mass AoE situations. But honestly, I don't think it needs it again, because Fire Mage does like the mass AoE. Frost Mage is great on like that sustained like 8 target to 10 target sort of damage profile, right? Then you've got Arcane, which is doing incredible 5 target damage. Everything has like a different damage part, and again, Mage actually really it's best in like 2 target cleave, right? Like that's its peak again because of splitting ice, but it still does incredible like AoE damage. Maybe you could have done the same with Arcane, where it's got its niche of like 5 targets, but it's still doing decent like 8 to 10, and then you just leave Fire Mage with its uncapped damage by itself. I don't really know, but it is falling a bit short of where I wanted to see it, if that makes sense. It definitely feels like Fire Mage and Frost Mage are going to be better than it. So it's getting an 8 out of 10. It's still getting incredible changes in terms of its utility. Specifically, like I said, Supernova, Dragon's Breath, and Blast Wave is kind of insane. That amount of AoE stops on a single spec where you can just be in control of it, that's kind of crazy. And honestly, you might just be, if you're going to pug all the time, you might just want to play this so you can just get an easier time of like controlling packs, if that makes sense. Like you've got a lot of mob control, so you could like carry keys like I mentioned. Let's move on to the gameplay review section then, so we can actually show you what Arcane Mage plays like in AoE. I'll start off with this talent tree, just like a mass AoE version. I'm going to drop this point here, so Arcane Bombardment. It's what we mentioned earlier, where you're getting 100% bonus damage on Arcane Barrage below 35% HP, because dummies are always low HP, right? You would just be proccing that, and you'd get a massively inflated sense of how much damage Arcane's doing. So we'll remove this. We'll use Arcane Familiar. It's a fairly boring node, but it's just a passive little pet that you get out, which increases your mana, your maximum mana. So we'll summon that. In terms of the actual rotation then, right, we start off with Radiant Spark. We'll use Touch of the Magi. We'll use Arcane Surge, so we've got all of our CDs on cooldown at that point. We'll then use Arcane Barrage, Arcane Orb, Barrage, Shifting Power, Orb, Barrage, and then it's just into normal AoE rotation. When our cooldowns come back up, right, so we get Spark, Magi, we'll drop Rune of Power again, and then we'll be back into normal Arcane Barrage and Arcane Explosion. So Spark, Touch of the Magi, Surge, Barrage, Orb, Barrage, Orb, Barrage, Shifting Power. You see we're peaking pretty high damage here. Orb, Barrage. We use it by clear casting procs, right? Just into our normal rotation now. I am holding Rune of Power again for our Radiant Spark window. We'll drop it now. We use Spark, Touch, Barrage, Orb, Barrage, back into normal rotation again. So that's been a minute. It's doing decent damage, right? But the main issue with it is that this is 4 target capped, sorry, 5 target capped. Our damage would be higher in a Mythic Plus, right? A, because packs are dying faster and it's a pretty bursty spec. But B, you'd also be getting this Arcane Bombardment damage, which is a lot of damage. I would rather give you a lower estimate on the damage profile, though, than a higher estimate, right? Because, like, this damage is all... It's just everything is adding up into Arcane, and then this just stacks on top, and then you've just got loads of damage. So it looks way, way higher if I play with it right, specifically on dummies, like I said, because we've got everything at low HP, it would give you a lot more, but it will do more in an actual practical application, right? But if we just look at this profile on dummies, that's 5 target capped, right? This is AoE, 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 single target, single target, single target, I think. So it's in that like 60 to 65% range of uncapped AoE, and then this is capped at 5 targets. So it's got a decent profile. Like, all of this stuff just is AoE, right? But it still feels like a lot of your damage is capped. And don't forget, this is going to be even higher, right? This will probably be something like 40 to 45% of your damage in a normal AoE situation on this number of targets, just because of bombardment, right? I mean, I can just show you quickly. We'll just do the burst window, right? We'll do the burst window quickly, and you can see how much damage it's doing. We'll do exactly the same. Spark, Magi, Surge, Raj, Orb, Raj, Orb, Raj, Shifting Power, Orb, Raj, Clear Casting. Just use Ring of, use Power now. You can see there, right, inside of CDs, we just used everything. Now it's doing like 45%. Obviously, if we continue our rotation, then Arcane Surge damage is going to drop off. Touch of the Magi damage is going to drop off, right? So it's going to be somewhere between this, like 45% and 35%. Let's just call it an even 40. So roughly, I'd say like 55 to 60% of your damage is going to be uncapped. The rest of it is going to be capped at certain target levels, right? And because most of your damage is coming from this 5 target, I just think it's not going to be as good as Frost and Fire in M+. It's still going to be fun though, and like I said, the changes to utility are awesome, and if you need to play something where you can just carry a group and carry all of the stops, Arcane Mage is probably going to be the go-to, because like I said, it's even better than Enhance, which is the other class that has an incredible amount of stops. So yeah, really, really good. Let us show you the other capstone nodes then. So let's do something like this. Let's do Slipstream as well. So this was one of the losses, the fact that we couldn't take this, so I'll show you why I like it. In the actual mage tree, we'll show you displacement, we'll show you greater invis, we'll show you temporal velocity, right? Otherwise, there's not that much new in here. Those are the biggest changes. So let's start off with this Prodigious Savant, and we'll do Orb Barrage, right? So this is the mastery increase. So before it was like 5.5%, right? Now it's 7.7, yeah. So you get an extra 2% damage on Arcane Barrage, so it's really not that much. Orb Barrage, so let's just get our orbs on cooldown, and then whenever we get a clear casting and spend it, so here, watch the cooldown will go down very quickly when I spend that clear casting. So there's an extra 2 seconds off that orb there. If I then spam arcane missiles, you'll see this just keeps going up. Orb barrage, right? When it gets to 15 stacks, I'll then get a free arcane orb. So the next arcane missiles will proc an arcane orb. There you go, and I just got max stacks. Not that great, but thought I'd show you anyway. Other things to show you, let's do, so I've got a clear casting proc, so that means I can cast arcane missiles on the move. It's a really nice ability to have, nice talent to have for any time that you need to move, to be honest. Arcane is pretty fixed. I mean, specifically for AoE, you'd like pretty much need to be in melee, right, to be using Arcane Explosion, and then if it's single target, well, Arcane Blast is what you're spamming most of the time, and then you can move in the Arcane Barrage globals. Outside of Barrage, though, it's kind of hard to move. Like, you can use Shimmer to move with Arcane Blast, but Arcane Missiles, you're standing still again. This just gives you a lot more flexibility, so that's a nice note to have. I don't think there's anything else to show you. I've Reverberates procced a bunch of times, right? Like lots and lots of times. It's just whenever I get 2 stacks of Arcane Orbs, so I just got 2 stacks there from Arcane Explosion, right? That's what that's doing. That's proccing. Let's show you. We get mana back on Arcane Barrage now. So look, this mana will just get topped. Yeah, so you don't have any mana issues because of this mana adept here, right? Which is really good. These two combined just make it so you don't need to worry about mana in AoE. Evocation, same as live. Like if I just spend all of my mana here, I'll spend a big chunk of it. Right, so I spent a lot of my mana. Well, then we can use Evocation, right, to get all of our mana back. So that's nice to have. You don't necessarily need it. There is a point underneath, which means that you get a bunch of intellect from Evocation, so it makes it like a cooldown, but kind of strapped for nodes at the bottom if you come into Arcane Harmony down here. It might be that like Conjure Mana Gem's not that great and it comes over to this side instead. Not too sure, but that's what the ability looks like. For the mage abilities, this is Greater Invis, right? So this is the button which gives us this 60% damage reduction whenever we need it. If I now use an ability, right, you'll see I drop out and then I've got 3 seconds of that damage reduction. So if you're doing damage, you're only really going to have that for like 4 seconds because you first global it and then you're going to have a few seconds afterwards of the damage reduction. Still very, very strong though. The other things to show you, so temporal velocity now, right? So whenever you use Alter Time, right? So my Alter Time, you can see my images back here. I use it and then I get this 40% movement speed when I use it as well, which is really nice. You also get a bit of movement speed on every single blink. Yeah. The final thing to show you is displacement. So look, I can now use my displacement to go back. So this is like Warlock teleport or also like Windwalker teleport, right? Very, very good for PvP. Again, it's frustrating that this competes with damage, right? So like you're never going to take this in PvE, I don't think, but PvP, like it's an actual worthwhile consideration. It could be really, really strong. Overall then, like I said, this is an 8 out of 10. It's not as good as Frostmage. You're still gaining massively in utility, right? So Supernova, Dragon's Breath, and Blast Wave, you have 3 incredibly short cooldown stops, AoE stops specifically, so that's really, really nice. You're gaining tankiness with Great Invisibility, with Reduplication, right? You're already insanely tanky because of your barriers. Specifically, Arcane Mage is just ridiculously tanky because you get, not only do you get a 25% shield in terms of like a HP increase in shield, you also then get 20% magic damage reduction with the shield as long as it's lasting. And that's on a 25-second cooldown. You get block, you get mirror image, and you get greater invisibility. So you're just insanely tanky. You also get all the time. You get another shield whenever you use Shimmer, right? Kind of crazy how tanky Mage is again. It's just nuts. Really, really tanky. The other wins, right? Arcane Surge. I love this. It's a great way to move away from just a flat damage increase on your cooldowns, right? It's very thematic. Awesome. And then the final win is Arcane Bombardment. So this is a lot of extra damage for a single point, specifically AoE. That is a huge amount of damage. We showed you the difference between a rotation where we had this and when we didn't, and the damage difference is insane. So it's a lot of damage. the losses then. So the base loss is down here, Arcane Barrage, we've just shown you. It's not that great for a capstone, specifically. Like, I don't really know when you would ever run it in AoE. It doesn't give you that much cooldown reduction on Arcane Orbs to really be worthwhile. And then the interaction with Arcane Missiles, I feel like Harmony is just a better interaction with Arcane Missiles. You're getting way more damage out of your barrages here. Again, this is just stacking up with other barrage damage as well, right, to make it way more effective. So it's a bit disappointing, this capstone. The next one is Slipstream. Slipstream, again, is one of these ones where it'd be so nice to have, a bit like Displacement. It'd be awesome if we could take it fairly easily, but it's competing with a lot of damage in this middle tier. Honestly, if you go in the build which I had before where we were playing something like this, to get into here, you sort of want to come through Supernova as well, right? And to get down in here, I mean, this we're already taking to get a mana gem, but if we're not taking mana gem, I don't know, maybe you don't take this as well, and then we can come over this way. I'm not sure, but honestly, I think to get Slipstream, you're going to drop like Supernova or like improved Prismatic Barrier maybe to go back and take it. So there's a lot of things competing with it, but it's a really nice quality of life to have, and it would be I don't know, it might be nicer if it was in this bottom row so you didn't have to take this crackling energy to get through or something. I'm not sure, but I'm not the biggest fan that this is where it is. The final one is Time Manipulation, which again is just, it's utility that's competing with damage, right? So it's almost never going to be taken. It's kind of in a position where you'd have to drop like Shifting Power to take it, really, which just isn't good. I don't see a world where we'd ever take this, really. It would be really strong if it was back here. Like, I would find 2 points to drop to like take it, you know what I mean? Because it would make Dragon's Breath an even shorter stop, and then you'd have just a crazy number of AoE stops. But again, it's not in a great place. So like I said, overall, it's an 8 out of 10. I do like the playstyle. I kind of like playing it. I haven't had as much fun as I did on Frost. I will say that. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, I've got a Discord down below. You can join into that if you want to be a part of the community. That would be awesome. But yeah, if you have enjoyed it, we'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.